Yeah, thanks everybody. Great to be here and happy to share a bit about what we do with DAR, especially in West Hawaii here. I will note, like, I kind of end up being sort of the face of DAR in Kona a lot of the time, but I'm backed up by this like small but super fierce, awesome team in our Kona office. We've got currently 9 staff, 10 staff, depending on how you count it. And they're all, they all work with us down at the harbor, down at Honokohau, and just crazy dedicated to all the work that we're doing. Really putting in long hours, longer than they're usually ever paid for, and dealing with all the slings and arrows that come with being in resource management. So I just wanted to put that out there that, thanks for being awesome. You and the rest of the team. I think we just wanted to kind of go through a bit about what we do in the Kona office in particular, talk a little bit about what DAR is overall, kind of more broadly than just this office, and then take questions at the end. We'll start off just kind of outlining what's DLNR, so the Department of Land and Natural Resources. What is DAR? It's a Division of Aquatic Resources within that DLNR. What does the DAR Kona team do in particular? And then how can you guys lend your support to our marine resource management monitoring work? So, listen here.
Oh, I got this one. So we work with the state of Hawaii, the Department of Land and Natural Resources. The mission is to enhance, protect, conserve, and manage Hawaii's unique and limited natural, cultural, and historic resources. So the Department of Land and Natural Resources is comprised of a bunch of different divisions. So you can see all the acronyms up here, what they all mean. And down here we are the Aquatic Resources. We are just one piece of ensuring the natural and cultural resources are cared for in the state of Hawaii. So our mission is to work with the people of Hawaii to manage, conserve, and restore the state's unique aquatic resources and ecosystems for present and future generations. And so what do we mean when we're talking about aquatic resources? So a lot of us, we're thinking about like the coral reefs here in West Hawaii. That's like the good stuff, right? But we also have some really important aquatic and other aquatic habitats around the state that the division manages. So we have streams, estuaries, and anchialan pools, which are really unique to Hawaii. We don't have those in a lot of places around the world. So these are all cared for with the Division of Aquatic Resources. So we look at the habitats, but we also look at the species that are residing there. So we're looking at fish, corals, invertebrates, limu, and these organisms are considered the natural resources that we are charged with managing, conserving, and restoring. And I just want to do a quick shout out to this octopus photo right here. I found that amongst our little pile of ones. I think Ashley pulled that one out of the MLCD. Love that picture.
Who took
Octopus
it?
is my favorite.
Who
What's that?
took the picture?
Ashley, if you're listening, love that. And I think Chris actually took this one.
It's got a little fish in its mouth.
Oh.
So pay attention to the photos. All right.
Yeah.
Is that symbiotic or not?
It is not. It's very much a predatory effect.
So with all of those different ecosystems and habitats and species, as you can imagine, we have to really prioritize our efforts when we're out doing our work. And so we're looking at the ecology of each of these ecosystems, making sure that the backbones of those remain intact. Looking at subsistence. So you might have heard of the water around West Hawaii referred to as the icebox, right? Like this is where we're storing our fish for the future, and this is something that is what we want to be able to preserve in terms of fishing grounds for subsistence resources. We also have the cultural values of these species and these habitats, as well as the commercial ventures and ensuring that we have commercial fishing available for livelihoods for folks, as well as, our tourism. Everybody likes to get out and enjoy these resources.
Yeah. So really, how do we go about doing what we're charged with managing, conserving, and restoring? So we have a handful of different kind of avenues that we kind of approach it with. So we have our basic fishing rules and regulations. That's kind of what DAR is generally most known for, is putting out fishing rules or altering fishing rules. That's through things like size and bag limits, seasonal closures, area closures, that kind of thing. Which goes into protected areas like our marine life conservation districts, fishery management areas. That all falls under this kind of idea of fishing regulations, fishing restrictions. But we also have some more sort of hands-on efforts, like our stocked fishing areas. So Wahiawa Reservoir on Oahu, with a couple other ones throughout the state as well. We're actively stocking areas for to make fishing opportunities. We have restoration work. We have a handful of things like this around the state. One of them is active invasive species removal, mostly focused on like limu and some other key invasive species around. We have coral restoration work that's, like I said a bit earlier, it's been going on Oahu for a few years now, but it's really been bumping up here in the last couple years, and we're really just getting off the ground now. Looking at additional restorative efforts, we have an urchin hatchery also on Oahu that focuses on limu removal, growing out urchins to outplant onto reefs where there's a lot of algae that they can kind of start to chew down. And then we have our monitoring work, and that's kind of what has been the sort of bread and butter of our office for the last 20 or so years. So Kona, the Kona team in particular, focuses on this region primarily. So we're charged with the west side of Hawaii Island. That's from Upolu Point up in the north down to Kalai down in the south. So that's the range of our district that also encompasses what's called affectionately as the WRFMA, which just really rolls off the top. The West Hawaii Regional Fisheries Management Area. So that's kind of our zone. We have a number of other districts throughout the state that handle manage the other islands, another half of this, or more than half of this island. So Hilo team has the whole east side, and then we have a Maui Nui team, a Kauai team, and various Oahu teams. And so what do we do? What does it look like in practice for what we're doing? And it's really anything. If it involves marine resources, aquatic resources, we probably have some sort of finger on scale, hand in the cookie jar. So in a given week, that means that we might be doing fish surveys 2 of the days. We might remove an illegal mooring. Another day, we might attend public meetings. A third day, chat with community members or fishers about fishing rules. On another day, and then all that could go out the window when we get some sort of emergency thing that we need to respond to. I might need to respond to a turtle with a hook in its mouth, or a bunch of fishing line that got wrapped around a coral head or something like that. So we kind of try to be flexible. We try to be nimble and be able to kind of change course at any given time and do what's most pressing at any given moment. But really, of those things, coral reef monitoring has been our real, like I said, bread and butter over the years. It's what's kind of been our ability to get out and have eyes on the reefs, and really just see what's going on and help track our key fisheries and key habitats over the years. So most of the work, especially in West Hawaii, is focused on coral reef monitoring, and most of that has been done on SCUBA primarily. And so we kind of just wanted to highlight a few of these projects that have been going on since the late 90s, kind of talk about what they were, what they currently are, and what we're planning for the future.
Yeah, so we do have sites that we visit up and down pretty much the entire coastline. The longest monitoring that we've been doing is with the West Hawaiʻi Aquarium project. So these are 25 permanent sites that we revisit every single year to collect data on fish and vertebrates, and we're also doing benthic monitoring. We're looking at coral composition, and these were set up to measure the effectiveness of the recently established fisheries replenishment areas. So, and we're looking at mid-depth habitats here. So like our ideal scuba diving depths, 30 to 50 feet. And it used to be focused on the aquarium fishery as a target, but we wanted to take more of a holistic view. And so I'll turn it over to Chris for this one.
Yeah. So the project overall started. Well, it's called the West Hawaiʻi Aquarium Project. So it's very much focused on whether or not the aquarium fishery, commercial aquarium fishery, was having a measurable effect on those key populations. But really, like over the years, programs change and foci change. So we're really trying to get a better understanding of, okay, how are the fish communities overall, the reef fish communities doing in West Hawaii more broadly? So that sort of started out with even before I came on, like just really thinking about the WAP data set more broadly than those species, those handful that were collected by the aquarium fishers, just to see what we can tell from that. So really looking at the fish community as a whole. And so we do that by doing a number of what we call belt transects. So we have a 25-meter line that we start at a little pin and swim in a straight line, count every fish that we see within this like 4-meter wide section of the reef. So we count all the fish, we size them into 5-centimeter size bins, and ID them down to the species level. And then at these same sites, we also try to get benthic data, like Camille said. We're trying to look at coral cover, algal cover, things like that, as well as tracking coral settlement and recruitment. So how many little corals are landing in these reefs over time.
So if you see these little settlement tile arrays out there, that's what you're looking at, is a way for us to be able to capture that recruitment.
Okay. Yeah, and then also all these WAP sites, all these 25 sites, are marked with these, they're stainless steel eye bolts, these little pins that are in the reef. Usually have about 6 of them per site. And so if you see one of these, also don't try to mess with it. Don't tie your boat off to it. I heard some of the ones on Oahu, some folks had like actually clipped a boat off to them and popping them out. Yeah. So please don't do that, and don't remove our floats. We use them to try to find these sites over and over again. Yeah, so they're very important. So yeah, the SWRF or the WAP data set, it really focuses on that mid-depth range kind of habitat, but that means we have some other areas that are missing. So it goes into these next surveys.
So the other more longer term data set that we have is the Shallow Water Resource Fish Survey, SWRF. We have really great acronyms, SWRF. So we're focused on those shallow habitats, those surgy zones. We've been doing those surveys every few years since 2008. You can see how much of the coastline we were able to cover. All of these red dots mean a site over the years. So we randomly select every 5 years around 70 sites, throughout 5 different rounds. We randomly select about 70 different sites to get out and survey those areas. And we're looking at those, trying to think about the value of these data sets is so important because we're looking at those resource fish in this survey. We're looking at those fish you're catching from shore. And so we're hoping to get back out and maybe revisit this survey and keep that going in the near future. And so for these surveys, these are just random locations. There's no pins. Don't worry about it on those. But if you ever do see a pin, please leave it in place. And then our field office has been expanding the monitoring program, so we're talking about those mid-depth habitats, we're talking about those shallow habitats. Well, what about everything else, and how do we keep data comparable? And so that's where this fun acronym, FAHU, comes into play, the Fish and Habitat Utilization Project. And so this is, the purpose of this survey is to expand across all of these depth zones and really get a look at all of the species assemblages, all of the fish, a lot of the invertebrates, and then benthic habitat, benthic composition, so the coral cover of an area. And so we're looking at not just a coral-rich habitat or just a surge zone, but we're looking at everything that's hard bottom between about 8 to 10 feet, as shallow as we can get and still be able to see and take pictures, and down to about 80 feet of depth. And we're also wrapping in some permanent monitoring sites to be able to monitor long-term coral health and reef composition in those areas.
And right there you can see a previous Jax employee, Nate Hayes, completing one of these surveys.
We have 3 of them now.
Yes.
We've stolen a handful of Jax employees. Sorry, Terry.
We were just borrowing them and they came back.
Okay, yeah, and so this FAHU project, this Fish and Habitat Utilization Project, really allows us to be more comprehensive in our monitoring, and like Camille said, like expand out beyond those couple of different habitat types. It also allows us to be more comparable with other monitoring programs throughout the state. So this same style of monitoring, it's based on a 5 meter wide by 25 meter long transect. This is a sort of standardized unit that's being used by a number of different organizations throughout the state. Started with Alan Friedlander's lab on Oahu, and is transferred over to Maui's team and Kauai's team, and now us and East Hawaii and maybe Oahu folks as well in the near future. But yeah, really want to make sure that we're all taking comparable data with each other so we can make these like important comparisons throughout the state. But another sort of facet of this that we've really been trying to sort of trying to spearhead ourselves. This isn't something that a lot of the other DAR teams do yet, but we're kind of leading the charge on it, is incorporating these awesome 3D models into our work. So in addition to capturing the fish and benthic community composition, we're also trying to get the structure, like what's going on with the structure of these sites. And we do that by utilizing this thing called structure from motion photogrammetry, which is a big term for take a bunch of pictures and turn that into a 3D model. So that's exactly what's going on here at a really small scale. This is a cauliflower coral that we modeled just to kind of test stuff. And what you can see is you get this really awesome, intricate, 3-dimensional view of a piece of reef. And that allows us to kind of estimate how complex that reef is. And if we see over time, over the scale of West Hawaii, that okay, maybe the corals are doing really great and it's increasing that complexity, that's great, we're doing something good. Otherwise, like if that complexity is declining, there's something wrong. There's some factors that are going on that are degrading reefs, and we need to figure out how to address those. So it's a really cool technology that we're incorporating and should lead to some really awesome results in the near future. I'll note that this is our 3rd year of sampling with this whole design. So we only have a 3-year data set at the moment, but we're hoping to continue that on into the indefinite future and continue this on for years to come. So yeah, that's really just a summary of all of them that we do. So it's the WAP project, the SWRF project, the FAHU, the benthic characterization, coral settlement, restoration, all that jazz.
And a bunch more we don't have time to talk about.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Yeah. So yeah, each of these projects kind of tell us different things about the data set. So like we said before, WAP was focused on that mid-range habitat, SWRF, that shallow area, FAHU, more comprehensive. But yeah, we really there's always gaps with any of these data sets, and we need to be very upfront about what they cannot tell us. Yeah, so for one thing, like I said, we started FAHU 3 years ago. We can't say anything about what was going on prior to that from that data set. Just the data don't exist. With WAP, it can tell us a lot about inside and outside of these areas, but it doesn't tell us more broadly about the entirety of the coastline. So each of them have their kind of pluses and minuses. And a big key part of this is once we can identify those gaps, we can figure out the various partners that we can work with to help fill those gaps. So, for example, working with local communities to enact their own monitoring efforts in their areas to help to bridge some of those gaps.
So yeah, so another thing that we do is coral damage response. So occasionally there's anchor damage, there's ship groundings, those types of things, and so our team does respond to those. Once again, we drop whatever we were doing and make sure that we get out there and get as accurate of information as we can, preferably while things are still happening. If we can get those reports quickly, we can get out there, and it's much easier to find these areas when we're in live time rather than going back days later. And so we're able to survey the amount of damage that is done to the reef, and we restabilize corals as much as possible, and we actually monitor to see if it actually recovers. We do have some of that 3D modeling capacity to be able to do for some of these areas.
And this is another key point where the various partners throughout the region can really help us. This damage event was right outside of Honokohau, right in front of the park, and it was we heard about it because of a dive tour operator. They noticed it on a dive. They gave us a call, called us in Dobor, and let us know that there was a boat that had anchored in the coral reef, and the chain was doing a bunch of damage, chain and line. So we were able to use that information, mobilize really quickly, get right out there with DoCare with us, the enforcement guys, with Dobor with us, and really just hop in the water and do this initial survey, help advise the boat operator on how to get their boat out of there without doing additional damage, because that's a really key part. We don't want to just, if we know that a boat is on the reef, we don't want to tell them, all right, just pull up anchor right away, because that could actually do additional damage. In this case in particular, their anchor line was wrapped around this boulder right here, and it was kind of underneath it. So we told them that they needed to put a tank on and go retrieve their line from under that before they pulled anchor. Otherwise, they would have just tumbled that thing over, or just not been able to pull up at all. So yeah, that's a really key part, is getting as much information to us as possible so that we can be on scene and take whatever mitigative action is necessary.
Oh, here's another one of the coral damage response.
Yeah, so just making sure that these things are reported. This is another incident or set of incidents that happened. We've seen a bunch of these down in more in like South Kona area, where folks have put sort of personal moorings in place. These ones tend to be problematic because we don't hear about them as much. They're in areas that tend to be a little more remote. But I've seen a handful of these where they were dropped directly on coral, and they're just they're not all that heavy. They're not well installed like the ones that Malamakai Foundation does. They're literally just sitting on the coral, and any swell moves them around, jostles things around, and just breaks more and more coral. So yeah, if folks see these, please report it to us, and we'll do our best to get them out of there.
So additional things that we respond to is with drifting nets, sunken debris, and so if we actually work with a few different partners that are able to help us with some of those larger debris removals, including some of our tour operators, and so if we can get those things reported quickly, we can get those out of the way so that they don't cause further impacts to the coral reef environment and endanger, our boats moving through, getting your props stuck on some of those bigger nets. We work with the Hawaiʻi Wildlife Fund to help remove some of the debris, and so we have a network of different people that are awesome and really helpful in removing that from the reef. We also respond to reports on coral disease, introduced species, reports of crown of thorns aggregations. These are native species, but we do keep an eye on their numbers. So yeah, feel free to call us and report, and we will respond accordingly. So
yeah, and then the less exciting, much more tedious aspect of what we do is we advise on permitting and rulemaking and policy decisions. So while it's really not glamorous, it is a really important part of the job, and it's a piece that feeds into a lot of our management decisions overall. So all of our permitting and policy stuff, it mainly flows through Oahu, but through our main office, but our role in the other districts is to make sure that those rules reflect what the people here need and what the specific resources here need. Because if it was just the Oahu folks making all the decisions for the whole state, things wouldn't go so well. So yeah, we try to use our data sets as much as we can to directly flow into our rulemaking efforts, so that everything is based on it as much information as we possibly can. And so we also collaborate and partner with a lot of other groups, both for research and monitoring, restoration, some of the marine debris removal work, the education and outreach, like what we're doing today. So we rely on these partnerships to really strengthen the work that we do. Like I said at the top, we have a fairly small team here, and we can't do everything that we'd like to do. So we really love having these sorts of partnerships where we can kind of spread the load and have us all working towards these same goals.
Yeah. So we kind of brought up a few of the things that you can do to help. We're going to go through in a little bit more detail and where you can find more information. So for rules and regulations, there is an interactive map for MMAs, more acronyms, marine managed areas. We have a bunch of different types of marine managed areas. There's different fishing rules and activity restrictions within each of those, and you can find that on an interactive map on the DAR website. So if you go to dlnr.hawaii.gov/DAR, it has all of the things that we're mentioning if you kind of look through and see what's available. But this map will kind of help direct you to better understand the rules and regulations of an area, but also maybe help get you into some of the more protected areas that are really good for snorkeling and scuba diving. Another thing that you can do is to communicate with us. So reporting the marine debris up here is the URL for that. I could not figure out how to get a free QR code. Sorry, folks. I tried and it didn't work. So there is a website. There are reporting forms on there. So if you come across a net or abandoned boat and potential Japan tsunami debris from back in 2011, these are all things that we would love to get reported. So if we can get that form filled out with your observations and the location information and maybe a photograph, those are really 3 key things that are super helpful for us to being able to get out there and respond and deal with that.
Yeah, two of the DAR staff in West Hawaii get automatic emails sent to us directly from that reporting system. So once a report is sent in, it automatically goes to me and Megan Lamson. So we'll see that immediately. If we see that it's Hawaii Island and it's somewhere over on West Side, we'll be able to take pretty rapid action for it. So yeah, please report.
Yeah, and a lot of times we're out on the water, in the water anyway, and sometimes we can just kind of get on site to some of these things. Sometimes it lines up really nicely. Other things you can do, continue to communicate with us by attending public hearings if there's new rules and regulations going out. There is an announcements board on the DAR website that tells you when public hearings are upcoming. And so participating in that rulemaking process for aquatic resources is kind of the most critical thing you can do for future regulations for the resources around our island. And come by the office. We are there. We have someone there 5 days a week. And then if you want to get more involved, the Eyes of the Reef Network is a community reporting network. They've now made the training modules available online. So if it's something you're interested in, you're out on the water all the time, everyone that spends time in the water, you can train your eyes to understand more about coral disease, introduced species, invasive species, fish diseases, and then when you come across these things, you can report it to us, and we can get out there and deal with things in a much more effective way. We have, like I said, we have limited staff around the island, but we have a lot of people that are out in the water. So getting involved with that is fantastic. And if you're a really good diver and you know your species well, we also maybe have some room on the dive team for some volunteers. So yeah, thanks everybody for being here, and if you have any questions.